what most guys do is they either give up or they keep doing more of the same, which isn't strong enough to get through. It's like shooting a BB gun at a tank. Or what they do is they get very, very reactive and get angry. Like, why are you da-da-da-da-da? And that will never work. So what is the friend zone? What's the difference between a friend zone interaction and an interaction where it is more man to woman? It's very simple. It comes down to the frame of the interaction. It comes down to the expectation that the people have in the interaction. You see, every single interaction has a shared understanding in order to make it make sense, right? If you go to a car lot, there's an expectation you're there to buy a car, and the people are going to act one way with you. Whereas if you go to a dinner party and someone tries to sell you a car, it would be weird. If you go to a car lot and someone offers you an hors d'oeuvre, maybe that's not as weird, but like maybe they're just buttering you up or something like that, but it's a little bit weird, right? And if they set you down at a table with a bunch of forks and spoons, that is a bit weird. Every interaction has an inherent, I like to call it premise, like an idea behind the interaction. It's really the frame of the interaction. It's the shared expectation, the social contract of that particular interaction. And the more evidence you have of that existing social contract, the harder it is to create a different interaction, the harder it is to have a different social contract be the case. With the friend zone, if you've been in the friend zone for 5 minutes and then you do something to get out of it, that's a much easier transition than if you've been in the friend zone for 6 months and then you try and get out of it, because there's more evidence of the existing friend zone the longer you've been in it. But the friend zone versus dating is basically all of the same things you would do in dating minus a few, right? So in a way, if you're in the friend zone, you're already about halfway to dating, right? So the friend zone has shared time together, has comfort, you've had good conversations together, has some level of trust, usually has some level of value. You see some value in each other, either in terms of exchanging fun or in terms of exchanging ideas, or you see them as a worthwhile human being, etc. So most of the things that are in a relationship exist in the friend zone as well. So technically, from the friend zone, you're a lot closer to a relationship than you would be if you were just a stranger off the street. The major thing that's missing is having been man to woman in the conversation, having taken those man to woman steps and establishing the frame that if something happens, it will be man to woman in nature, that there is that possibility. See, women are not really at liberty socially to make moves on men and take, social risk, because they could be seen as slutty, they could be shunned. If a woman hits on a man and gets rejected, it can really mess with her self-image. Usually, unless you indicate to the woman that it's okay to be man to woman, she simply won't be man to woman with you. Normally, from this point, if I was talking about the friend zone, I would talk about how to then add those man to woman. But right now, I'm first going to start with the reverse. We're talking about how to subtract the man to woman. Right? How do you subtract man to woman out of the conversation with a girl that's trying to hit on you? Well, what you do is you downplay it and ignore it a little bit, and you use a lot of non-man to woman words. So say I'm talking to two girls and say girl A is the one I like and girl B is the one that I don't want to have any kind of sexual relationship with, and girl B is kind of hitting on me. Well, girl B, I'm going to tell her how nice and organized and having her shit together, and what a good, I'll say the word friend to her. By the way, if you want to friend zone someone, literally call them a friend, right? That helps a lot. You say she would be a good friend, you could trust her, she's reliable, she's safe, all these kind of words. Whereas what words are going to use with the girl that you don't want to be in the friend zone with? You're going to say words like naughty, devious, trouble, bad news. You're going to tell her you don't know if you'll get along. You might say she has red flags. You might say you're going to break up with her, right? So there are certain words you can choose immediately that are friend zone or non-friend zone words. I had a coach, and he had a thing that he would do in boot camp, which I really, really liked. He would just give a list of words and phrases that were man to woman words and phrases. And he would tell guys that were too platonic, that were getting into non-man to woman, friend zone-y type conversations, 30-minute conversations in nowhere. He would tell them, pick some words off this list. And some of the words on that list would be like sassy, trouble, cute, adorable, but words that are not things you say platonically, right? So if you just start changing your vocabulary, that already is a good start towards getting out of the friend zone, at least very early on, right? And if your sample of interaction with someone is 30 seconds, and in that 30 seconds you've called them trouble, cute, sassy, and devious, you're not in a very friend zone-y conversation. Now let's talk though about when you have longer term friend zones, right? If you've been in the friend zone for 6 months and you have a pattern of behavior of being a friend for 6 months, well then how do you get out of that? Well, the answer is you do the exact same thing as you should have done in that first 5 minutes. You just do it a little more slowly. There's also being less available for the girl and being willing to disagree with the girl, being willing to give negative spikes to the girl. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But if you've been just very friendly and nice and never used any man to woman words with the girl, well, what you need to do is start being a little less friendly, a little less nice, and using those man to woman words. But instead of stacking 5 of them in the first minute of the conversation when you haven't done any of them for 6 months, just use one, when you hang out with her today. And then use 2 more that when you hang out with her next time, and maybe 2 or 3 more the next time, and you start gradually changing the ratio and you stop using words like friend and like, reliable, safe, you stop using those words, you start using the man to woman words in sort of a graded way. And the nice thing about being in the friend zone, if there is a nice thing about it, and there is that you're going to see the girl over and over again. If you're actually friends with a girl, if you're actually in the real friend zone, not that she rejected you and just said, I see you as more of a friend and then doesn't return your calls, that's a different thing. That's the I don't like you zone, okay? That's the I blew you off and called you a friend zone. But if you're actually in the friend zone with the girl, if you're actually friends with her, you're going to see her over and over again, and you have plenty of time to get out of it. So you just need to make progress, make slow, steady progress out of it each time that you're seeing her. Someone asked the question, which I think is a really good one. Let me see if I can find it. It was something like, do you start taking... I'll read it off. It says, steps you take to get out of the friend zone. Do you start verbally or physically? Typically verbally, but honestly both. Because if you are friends, you can already do physical things. If you're friends with a girl, you can absolutely hug a girl you're friends with. And you can absolutely console her, or you can touch the arm or the shoulder of a girl you're friends with. You don't have to be like, oh, I can never touch her because she's my friend, right? There are lots of casual, friendly touches you can have, and you probably should already have that in your relationship with girls. And if you don't, by the way, start doing it because it's good practice. It's good practice to be just sort of casually, socially tactile with girls. It's good to hug your female friends. It's good to not be afraid to, touch them consolingly if they're having a hard time, right? It's an okay thing to do, and it's a good habit. But you can start that kind of stuff from the get-go, and then you start using a few more of these man-to-woman words. You start gradually ramping it up, and as there are more man-to-woman words, it becomes more appropriate to do more man-to-woman touch. But usually I would start with the words first because the words are a lot safer. The words are a lot safer way to go. And it's more about the trajectory and the direction of where you're going. Someone says, how do you switch from the friend zone to flirty without being awkward? You do it gradually, right? You don't do it all at once. The one thing you don't do, the absolute one thing you don't do, which is the most common thing guys do, is you don't just suddenly declare your intention to declare your undying love. You don't tell the girl that you've been friends with for 6 months that you've never been man-to-man with, but like, by the way, Molly, Melissa, whatever the fuck her name is, I just have to tell you, I gotta get it off my chest. I've always had a crush on you. I think you're amazing. I think you're beautiful. That's the way to get out of the friend zone into the I'll never talk to you again zone. Don't do that. You do not do that. In the same way that it's actually a bad game to walk up and declare undying love to a random girl in a bar that you're trying to meet also. The best way to show man to woman is not through compliments. Doing compliments does show man to woman, but it's the wrong type of man to woman. The vibe you're trying to convey is not, I'm in love with you. You're not trying to tell the girl you're in love with her. What you're trying to tell her is, if we have an ongoing relationship, it will be a man to woman one. That's what you're trying to tell her. But you're not trying to say you are going to have a man to woman relationship for sure. Which brings me to the second point I kind of said at the start, which is you have to be willing to lose the relationship, right? In order to have a healthy relationship in a man to woman way, you actually have to be willing to walk away. If a girl were to give you enough shit, or violate enough of your boundaries, or just be awful to you, you should be willing to walk away. If you're not willing to walk away, it is an unhealthy relationship and not one you want to be in. Also, she's not really going to respect you. And it is actually possible to be in the friend zone with a girl without her having a ton of respect or seeing a ton of value in you, as long as she sees value in something she can get from you. There are guys who are in the friend zone because they constantly give the girl rides places and constantly pay for things for her, or constantly are there to hear her, cry about her ex-boyfriend and provide sympathy and that kind of stuff. That's not the type of friendship you want to be in, and that's especially not the type of man-to-woman relationship you want to be in. Obviously, you don't want to be in a man-to-woman relationship where the nature of your relationship is hearing her complain about the other guy she's sleeping with. That's obviously very perverse. But if you are in those types of relationships, you need to also, in addition to being man-to-woman, you need to start standing up for yourself a little bit, right? You need to start, if there are conversation threads that you just fully don't enjoy, just cut them off or just don't entertain them, right? Or if you're constantly, the girl's calling you, hey, can you drive me here? Can you drive me here? Can you do this for me? Sometimes start saying no. Be like, sorry, I'm busy. And let her realize you have boundaries, realize you have your own life, realize you're not always available. And she'll actually start respecting you a bit more for that. All right, so that's another piece of the puzzle if you're in like the really, really bad friend zone. Because a lot of times the reason that guys get in friend zone, it's a couple, right? One is they didn't make it man to woman. The other fundamentally is they put the girl on a pedestal. And then because they put the girl on a pedestal, because they treated this girl like this angelic, heavenly creature, they were afraid to take a risk, afraid to make it man to woman. They were afraid to ruin or lose the relationship. Like, oh my God, like they basically are thinking that they're gonna friend zone, and then someday she's gonna just wake up and it's gonna be like one of those Hollywood movies where you got a male makeover, you walk down the stairs, you took your glass off, and like, you know, the harps play and the spotlight comes down, and she's like, oh shit, I never realized I'm in love with my best friend. Doesn't really happen like that in real life. Okay? You have to actually make it happen. You have to actually be the right type of guy. There is an aspect of the friend zone that is not just being man to woman, but also standing up for yourself, being less available, and even being willing to be offensive, right? Being willing to say something impolite around her, being willing to disagree with her, right? This is getting away from the friend zone a little bit, but it'll come right back in a second. One of the simplest philosophies, one of the easiest ways to attract women in general, a friend of mine had this as his entire game method years and years ago. It was basically I disagree with the girl for the first 5 minutes, and after that I start agreeing with her. Right? If you want to get out of the friend zone, start disagreeing with the girl a little bit. Start, standing up for yourself. Another thing that will really, really help with getting out of the friend zone, if you're in a very platonic friend zone, if she doesn't see a lot of value around you, if she starts to see other girls attracted to you, that is going to make her see you in a different light. So if she's always seen you as this nice, safe, platonic friend, if she sees other girls flirting with you, that'll help. To an extent, this one's a little dangerous. To an extent, you could even tell stories about like other girls and things like that if it's happening and let her see that. Now, you want to be careful because you don't want to preclude yourself, like put yourself off the market with her to the point that she wouldn't make a move or consider you in that category for a different reason. And you also don't want to come off as too player-ish, and you don't want to come off as having too much of an agenda around women. So you want to make sure the things you're conveying are positive. But if you did, happen to mention, like tell a story where a girl clearly had a crush on you as part of the story, and it's not like I'm not trying to tell, like, you're not trying to tell it like you're trying to show off to her or make her feel jealous, but it just happens to be a good enough story with that element that could actually be pretty useful as well. So that's another thing you can do. And again, what does that do? It's about putting you in the different category. It's about her seeing you in a different light because it's about the frame of the conversation. So the next question, similar, what can I do if I can't help but have platonic conversations with women? So there's two aspects to being non-platonic. The first aspect of being non-platonic is having a pair of balls. It is being willing to take a risk, right? Because having a platonic conversation is safe. You're not going to offend anybody. You're not going to get rejections. You're not putting your ego on the line, but you're also not going to get anywhere romantically. So the first thing is being willing to take a risk. Risk a rejection, also risk a success. A lot of guys actually, ironically, I think are more scared of success than they are of rejection. What they're scared of is they do something, it creates sexual tension, and then they don't know what to do and it feels awkward from there. You need to embrace that sexual tension and try and put yourself in good situations. Trust your future self to figure them out. So the first part is the emotional one. The second one is technical, which is knowing what kinds of things to say and do. The easiest way to handle the technical one, honestly, is steal what's already worked, right? So borrow any line you've ever heard me use. I have a PDF somewhere, steal my lines. You can borrow those. But any kind of a push-pull line, any kind of a line that says, I like you, but I'm not sure. Or I like this about you, but I don't like that about you. Or I liked you until this. Those kind of things. Or there are certain words that are inherently push-pulls. Like the word trouble, like saying a girl is trouble, that is a one-word push-pull. Because is calling a girl trouble a compliment or an insult? Well, on its face, it's insulting slightly. It's a negative, right? I shouldn't have said compliment or insult. I should say, is it positive or negative? On its face, it's negative. But the very fact that a girl could be trouble is assigning her some level of power, right? You have to be powerful to be trouble. Like a newborn baby is not trouble, aside from the obligation it has to its parents. But to a random stranger, a newborn baby is not trouble because it has no power. It has no ability, no volition to do anything in the world. But a seductive woman who captures your mental energy and distracts you from your work and has, if you were to talk to her, there's other guys that could be jealous and might be angry at you for talking to her, that woman is dangerous, right? So saying the word dangerous or trouble or those kind of things, that's assigning a certain level of power, and that's where the compliment part of that word comes in. Devious, same thing, right? Devious is inherently negative, but the ability to be devious, the ability to deceive is a power. Is a form of power, it's a form of influence. So these kind of words are inherent push-pulls, as well as obviously, this is good, this is bad, I love you, I hate you. those kind of things. But those are much better, as I mentioned before, than compliments. You do not want to compliment your way to the girl's heart. You do not want to compliment your way out of the friend zone. And you especially, again, don't want to declaration of love your way out of the friend zone. That really, really doesn't work. What would you do if you were consistently told you're a nice guy? What do I need to change? Be less nice. Be less nice. The first thing, I kind of want to just say this because I like the quote, but it also just to hammer home the point. It's a line from a movie. The first time someone calls you a horse, you punch him in the face. Second time someone calls you a horse, you call him a jerk. Third time someone calls you a horse, maybe it's time to start shopping for saddles, right? That's the line. If somebody tells you a nice guy once, whatever. But if you're consistently being told you're a nice guy, that's not the other person's problem, that's your problem. If the world keeps telling you you're a nice guy, guess what? You're too nice. Stop being so nice. Exercise the word no. The word no is a very powerful word. Start saying it. And actually say it explicitly. Don't be like nah or I'm not sure or whatever. Or no, just like literally say no. That's the first start to being not a nice guy. Start saying no to people. Start standing up for yourself. When you are in a conversation and you have an opinion, instead of sitting there silently and wondering if your opinion's good enough or wondering if you should say it, just blurt it out. Here's a funny story. This happened to me many, many, many times in like middle school when I was, I wanted to be attracted to women. I wanted to stand out, but I was inherently a very passive guy. I was inherently very afraid of breaking the rules, but I was also very clever and I was very smart and I had a lot of good stuff going on. And so I remember various times in middle school, there would be a time in class when something was said and I had like a snarky, really genuinely hilarious snarky comment that if I had said it, would have gone over very well with the class. It might have gotten me in trouble, but would have gone over very well in the class. But I didn't have the balls to say it out loud. But I wanted to say it. I wanted to share it with the world. So I'd whisper it to my friend who was next to me, who was more of a troublemaker than I was. And some of the time he would actually say it out loud after I'd said it to him, and the class would laugh. I'm like, God damn it, that was my line. I should have gotten that recognition, right? But I was too fucking nice, right? I was too afraid of a negative reaction, and I missed out on a hugely positive reaction. I missed out on turning all the girls' heads in a very positive way. You need to take risks. If you are never rejected, you are not going to have a lot of success. And that's true with women. It's true in almost every area of life. It's true in things like sales especially, right? It's true in business. If you never hear the word no in business, you're not trying hard enough. Yeah, if you want to not be a nice guy, stop being so nice. Start saying the word no more often and start hearing the word no more often. Start standing up for yourself, start sharing your opinions and trusting that your opinions are good enough. The interesting thing is, if you fail by not taking a risk, you've not only failed, you also never learn and you'll never grow. If you fail by taking a risk, you're at least going to learn. You're at least going to find out exactly, how to calibrate next time. You're going to find out where you went over the line, those kind of things. So yeah, if you're being told you're a nice guy, you are in fact being a nice guy. You're being too nice. You can also consider being a little more impolite. One thing I like to do early on in a conversation with girls is just like say an impolite word. Because a lot of guys walk on eggshells around hot girls all the time. For example, a lot of times when I go out on boot camp, I'm dressed like in black. So I look like bouncers. A lot of times, a lot of girls think I work in I'm a waiter at the bar, a bouncer at the bar, bartender, something like that, because I'm wearing black. And a lot of times because I look cool and comfortable and relaxed in the environment, but I'm not talking to anyone because I'm watching my students, right? And I'm trying to observe as opposed to talking sometimes. So girls will come up to me assuming I work there, and they say, "Oh, do you know where the bathroom is, or where's this thing?" And instead of just giving a platonic answer, I'll be like, "How the fuck should I know, right? Why the fuck are you asking me?" And they're going like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "I'm just fucking with you." But the fact that I was willing to say an impolite word to this hot girl, it automatically takes her out of her normal hot girl reality, and it surprises her and gets me on her radar. So even that little bit of being not nice can actually be quite effective and quite useful as well. Okay, so this is the hot girl blasé one. I love this question, by the way. What do you do when certain girls put themselves in the friend zone? For example, when you tease or flirt with her and it's met with a platonic response. You may have heard the term hot girl blasé before, and usually when I say hot girl blasé, I mean the girl who's just like ignoring you rudely. Like the girl who like you're trying to talk to her and she's like on her phone, kind of just yeah, okay, whatever, yeah, right. That's the mean, rude type of hot girl blasé, and that's probably the harder type of hot girl blasé to get through for most guys. But there's another type of hot girl blasé that's much more insidious, and for guys who have decent game and are willing to be polarizing is actually kind of harder to get through. And that's the nice hot girl blasé. And typically really well-mannered, well-raised girls who have always been popular, they do this kind of blasé, where every time you try and make it man to woman, they aren't rude to you. They just respond with something really, really friendly. Like if you say like, if you for not that this would be a good game, but if you said you're hot, like that dress looks hot on you, I'd be like, oh, that's so sweet of you. Bless your soul, right? Something like that, right? Where it's completely like demeaning and infantilizing and just treating it like, oh, thank you, cute little kid who's not on my radar in a sexual way. Or maybe you say something like that and they just like ignore it and they're like, oh yeah, so we were talking about, so anyway, as I was saying about the ski trip, and they just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen, right? And they just kind of blow off the man to woman stuff. When that happens, it is tough, first of all. But what you need to do is you need to somehow crack through that frame. And what most guys do is they either give up or they keep doing more of the same, which isn't strong enough to get through. It's like shooting a BB gun at a tank. Or what they do is they get very, very reactive and get angry. Like, why are you da-da-da-da-da? And that will never work because that's extremely low value and it just shows you're not a competent guy. What you want to do is actually kind of tease her back. So she's putting you in the frame where you're kind of like silly and not taken seriously sexually. What you want to do is you put yourself in the frame that you are the guy who girls think of in a very sexual way, and she is kind of silly and not being taken seriously. And then it's a frame battle. It's a frame battle of whose frame is stronger. The other thing that you can do, and this isn't easy, is just be genuinely hilarious, right? If you can get the girl to genuinely crack, right? Because she's holding a frame. If you can get her to crack, that works. If you can get her to start thinking internally rather than externally, so commenting on things she's doing, like there's an old school neg, you blink a lot, which is interesting because blinking's an unconscious thing. And if you start consciously thinking about blinking, it makes you kind of insecure, puts you in your head, and it takes you out of your natural sort of very confident flow. So stuff like that can kind of work just to kind of off balance the girl and get yourself on her radar. And then you just have to be a high value guy. And you have to be very confident in your frame, do and say high value things, etc. The nice thing though about this, like the polite blasé, is that the girls will stay with you for a period of time. So you have a much longer time period to give them a sample of high value behavior. So if you are a truly high value guy, you only have to do a couple little things to get on their radar. And then mostly it's just staying there and being a high value guy, being non-reactive, giving them a little bit of shit. Instead of having like one sledgehammer blow that busts the rock, you have like a little chisel where you just gradually chisel away at it until the rock busts. So that's kind of the approach there. Okay, what would it mean if a girl says she's not feeling a connection? That is not the friend zone. That is not the friend zone. If a girl says she's not feeling a connection, that is the I know you're trying to be romantic with me and I'm not interested zone. And it's really interesting. I've gotten this question. I get this question a lot. The fundamental first thing you need to ask yourself is, should you take literally the things girls say? Because I'll give you an example, right? This doesn't happen to me much anymore, but as I was like going through my intermediate phase in game, I would have a lot of interactions, like a lot of dates I would go on, where there was a lot of attraction and a lot of chemistry and a lot of tension and a lot of physicality. But there was not a lot of get to know you. There was not like, we might not even barely know each other's names. And that we didn't talk about, esoteric topics or like life, passions, and dreams. It was a lot of tension, teasing, making out, very sexual. And if you have a date like that then does not end in sex, it's very, very common that the girl will not see you for a second date. Because afterwards she thinks back, she's like, okay, I was very sexual, that's out of character for me. It was very, I was aroused at the time, but I'm not, when she's thinking back on it later, she's not aroused and she doesn't feel the same way, she just doesn't feel as good about it. And she thinks, if I go on a second date with this guy, he's 100% gonna think it's just for sex. And there's a reason why sex didn't happen on the first date. So she's gonna be very, very resistant to it. Obviously, oftentimes she's not gonna go on a second date with you. But the funny thing about it is that I would often get a girl saying, after this date, I really didn't feel sexual chemistry with you, I see you as more of a friend. Which makes no fucking sense at all. It is the absolute opposite of reality. Like, if you believe that, you would have to go unwire your entire understanding of what life is, what relationships are, what friends are. And so what I realized is, you're not my type, I just see you as more of a friend. It's a rationalization or a nice way of putting a decision they've already made. They made the decision for a completely different reason. They made the decision because basically what we had in this case that I'm giving, in the example I'm giving, was this was physical and there was no actual substance behind it, and I'm not down for a purely physical relationship. But then their rationalization was, there was no sexual chemistry, I see you as more of a friend. What actually happened though was, I didn't see you as enough of a friend. We had only sexual chemistry, and I'm not okay with that. So you have to be very careful with that. If a girl says she's not feeling a connection, all it means is I don't want to see you anymore. That's all it means. It does not mean it's because you didn't have enough comfort. It might be because you didn't have enough comfort. It's possible, but it might be for a lot of different reasons also. So that goes that way. There's also the I didn't feel any chemistry, or the girls will say I didn't feel that spark. They all just basically mean I don't want to see you again. and then it's a rationalization. And maybe you can say like, I know this much, which is she doesn't want to see me anymore, and then I can 20% likely it's what she said, and 80% likely it's whatever other random reason. But you can't really trust that other than the outcome. Trust the action, which is not seeing you again, more than you trust the words, which is her rationalization of why she's not seeing you again. That said, if what you hear over and over and over again is connection, you can start to think slightly maybe you need more comfort in your game, something like that. But on a one-off, it doesn't mean anything. It just means I don't want to see you again. What kind of reactions do you look for from the girl when you get man to woman with her? Sometimes it may be neutral or slightly negative. Not sure where to go from there. This is a great question. So obviously, if you make it man to woman with a girl and she gives a positive reaction, that's great. And that's green lights. Keep escalating, keep going. Don't rush it, but that's all good. And that's what we all would like to see. And that's, if you're doing good game, that's what you're gonna see more often than not. However, if you get a neutral response, that's also great. Because let's say that you're talking to a girl and it's a little platonic, and then you do or say something man to woman, especially something teasing man to woman, but she continues to talk to you. Well, now she's continuing to talk to you as a guy who made it a little bit more man to woman. And so you actually have a little more permission and the interaction is a little more man to woman than it was before. It's not as good as if she had responded positively, but the interaction is still better after you said the man to woman thing and got a neutral response or a non-response even than it was before doing the man to woman thing. Or another really funny one is I've had a lot of interactions, again, not as many now, but when I was learning game, I had a lot of interactions where on a date I would go for a kiss and the kiss wouldn't necessarily work. Like she would I would not get the kiss the first time I tried. But then the girl would keep talking to me, keep hanging out, we'd continue the interaction, and then hours later maybe we'd kiss or things would go well on a second date or whatever. The interesting thing was the interaction often got, other than the fact that it sucks to get rejected on a kiss and it feels bad, but the actual interaction would get better after trying for the kiss and failing because now she's staying and talking to you as a guy who has tried to kiss her. And a lot of times, actually, she might have just been surprised you tried to kiss her the first time. And then like a few minutes later, it's registered to her, it's okay. And then she goes ahead and kisses you. When you make a man to woman move and you get a positive, obviously that's good. When you make a man to woman move and you get neutral or even largely non-reaction, that's actually still positive in the sense that the interaction is better for having had that happen than it was beforehand. Obviously, if you get an outright negative, that's bad. Outright negative is a problem, and when that happens, you should usually back off, maybe false time constraint, change the topic, and rebuild the interaction and go back 3 or 4 steps and gradually rebuild back up to where you were. So an outright negative is clearly a negative, but a neutral reaction is actually a positive, strangely enough, in most cases. Okay. Any tips for not falling into the friend zone with a woman in longer-term social circle scenarios? Okay, so I want to address social circle in general as it comes to friend zone because in a social circle, you're going to be in the friend zone with a lot of girls, right? Because in a social circle, you can't date every single girl. If there are 10 girls in a social circle, you're not going to date all 10 of them, unless you're Hugh Hefner, in which case, awesome. You set up a great frame for yourself and a great lifestyle and well played, well done, sir. But in general, you're not dating 10 girls in a social circle. You're going to be friends with 9 of them and date 1. Being good friends with those other 9 helps though. It's social proof for the one you are dating. It makes your life more fun. It's nice to have those social connections. And then if and when you ever break up with that one, you have other girls who are just waiting eagerly, oftentimes, to step in and be your girlfriend because they've seen you being a good boyfriend. They've seen the social proof of hopefully a hot girl in the social circle liking you, talking you up, bragging about you, all those kind of things. And maybe they've even been jealous. Maybe they've even been wanting it from the sidelines. In a social circle, it's actually fine and normal to be in the friend zone with most people because that's what a social circle is. It's a circle of friends. And in fact, in a social circle, because it is normal to be friends and because you don't want to get a negative reputation, usually you don't want to make it extraordinarily man to woman in that social circle. So what I actually recommend is I make a distinction between what I call teasing and flirting. Teasing is when you give someone a hard time. Flirting is when you give someone a hard time and you make it man to woman in nature. So if a girl does something silly, I go, oh my God, you're such a dork. That's just a tease. But if I go, oh my God, you're such a dork, this is why it would never work out between us. Now it's man to woman because I mentioned a relationship, right? So mentioning a relationship on the end of the tease makes it a flirt rather than a tease. Typically, you don't want to do a lot of flirting in a social circle. You want to do a lot of, you can do teasing. And you can tease everyone. You can tease the girls you're not into. You can tease the girls you are into. You can tease the guys. What you want to do is be friendly and kind of friendly in a teasy, fun, giving each other shit kind of way within the social circle. And then you just want to end up, because of the trust that comes from the social circle and the fun of your interactions in the social circle, in a one-on-one interaction with the girl you're into outside of the social circle setting. Like, for example, you're all like, going skiing or whatever, and you like join her for a hot chocolate at the end and it's just the two of you. Now, when you're in that isolated environment, now you can actually flirt with her and there's not other people around. There's no damage to her reputation. There's no damage to your reputation, and you can escalate in that environment. So you want to do your escalations outside of the social circle, but within the social circle, you do want to tease. You want to establish yourself as a high value guy. You establish yourself as a fun guy, as a guy who's willing to, we talked about other things for getting out of the friend zone, having boundaries, being willing to say no, standing up for yourself, sharing your opinions. You'll be doing all those positive things. And then from there, create a situation where you're not in the social circle. Escalating publicly in the social circle is very risky in terms of blowing up the social circle. That's what I would try and do in those kind of cases. But what you don't want to be is a platonic pushover, right? You don't want to be that guy. You do want to make sure that you're standing up for yourself. But here, what do we got here? Question, how would you go about meeting a woman at work who's in a different department, especially if your paths wouldn't naturally cross? Work is inherently dicey because if you value your job, and hopefully you do, hopefully you like your job because hopefully you are employed at an appropriate level that you worked hard to get to and you're passionate about your career. You don't want to fuck it up. That's one of the best reasons to learn game, actually, is because if you don't learn game, you're not going to meet any girls except the ones at your work and the ones who you randomly bump into. And that means you're risking your entire career every time you try and go on a date, which is potentially problematic. It's much better if you could date an equally good girl that doesn't work with you to date the equally good girl who doesn't work with you. That said, in this case where she works in a different department, your paths wouldn't naturally cross. Hopefully there's not some kind of weird you're her boss relationship that could get you in real trouble. Assuming it's actually safe and good and won't hurt your reputation, well, you just have to ask how kind of connected are you and how likely it is you guys are going to bump into each other randomly. Because that work setting is either essentially a cold approach setting because you're never going to see her otherwise, or it's a social circle setting, or maybe it's a cold approach setting with a little bit of added comfort because there's the familiarity that you both work, at the same thing. In a similar way to like when I was in college, if I would do approaches on my college campus, it is a cold approach because I've never met the girl before and I probably would meet her or see her again at some point, but there's no guarantee of that. But there's the familiarity that we're both probably students there. And so there's an added layer of comfort. And that's what it will probably be in this particular case. I would treat it similar to a social circle in the sense of I would avoid heavily hitting on a girl at work because of all the reputational stuff. And also because of just that she might feel uncomfortable in the sense of at work, she doesn't know how to react to it. But I would certainly be social, be friendly. It's a good idea, whether work, non-work, everywhere, to just say hello and goodbye to people you meet. Guys, girls, everyone. Just be a social person. People like people who they like. People like people who are friendly. People like people who they've had good interactions with. And there's a thing called the mirror exposure effect, which is when you've seen someone over and over again, you get familiar. But when you've said hi to someone multiple times, you say hi and bye to someone like 3 times, you feel like they're friends with you, right? You feel like they're a good friend. And if you say hi and bye to someone 3 times, the 3rd time you say hi or bye to the girl, she very likely will start a conversation with you because she'll feel normal talking to you and she'll almost feel like it's awkward not to talk to you, almost more so than awkward to talk to you, especially say like you're in an elevator together or maybe not elevators are weird, but if you're stuck in a situation where you're in each other's company for an extended period of time, she'd feel weird not saying something to you if you said hi and bye 3 or 4 times before that. So first of all, just say hello and goodbye to everyone, especially including the girl you're interested in. And then it's okay to tease. Again, keep the teases work appropriate. Don't make them heavily sexual or highly offensive or stuff like that. But it's okay to tease and have that banter. And the ultimate goal is to get a one-on-one situation where it is then appropriate to tease a bit more, to flirt, and then you can take it from there. If it ever was a situation where you're never going to see the girl again or it's the only time you're ever going to see a girl, then you might do it as more of a cold approach thing. But try not to do the open clearly in front of your colleagues or her colleagues because that's just going to make it awkward for both of you. There's another one that just popped up here. We'll take it. At what point do you tell her you're starting to like her? At the part where she's already told you she likes you. I do not like declaring interest outright. I really personally, as a beginner, direct openers are fine. Because if your major issue is you don't make it man to woman, then by all means go direct. But when you do a direct opener, like telling a girl you like her, she has to, in that moment, look you up and down and be like, would I sleep with this guy? Which means that all the future great things you were going to do to build your value and be interesting and build comfort are not factors in her decision. And once she makes that decision, it's going to be much harder to unwind it and get her to change her decision than it would have been to get a better decision in the first place. So I don't like being super direct, and I don't like being like, I'm starting to like you, etc., until you've already pushed her away and until she's given some indicators of liking you. Typically, You guys have probably heard my whole sequence from the system: open, premise, evaluate, narrative, close, as a sequence of going through game. There's a much simpler sequence that I've been teaching a lot on bootcamp, teaching a lot on the mentorship calls, which is just simply step one: I don't like you yet, or I'm not sure if I like you. So your vibe towards her is, I'm not sure if I like you. Now, I'm interested in whether I like you. If we do like each other, it will be man to woman, but there's no certainty that we'll like each other, right? I don't like you yet. I'm not sure if I like you. That's step one. Step two is, you're starting to win me over. Step three is, I like you, but, right? And at no point is there just an overt, I like you unconditionally, you're my princess, none of that kind of stuff. It's always with reservation, always with tension involved, even on the third step. And the third step isn't what you lead with. You first have that tension and push away, then you have her earning it, and then you have you saying you're starting to like her. So in that format, you would start to tell a girl, you're starting to like her conditionally and with reservations in maybe phase 2 and definitely in phase 3 of the sequence. But by the time you're there, she's already showed interest in you. So I do not like showing overt complementary interest in girls that have not shown at least some interest in you first. I feel like that's very inefficient. I would much rather show interest as a push-pull. I like this about you, I hate this about you. I liked you until you said that. I'm breaking up with you now, which says I'm considering dating you, but in a negative. Things like that. So those are the types of things that I would recommend much more strongly than these declarations of interest. I think those are a very poor way of expressing yourself. I just got asked if I want to do one more question. It says, what if I know for a fact that she's single and looking for a boyfriend, but she said just as a friend, sure, when asked about meeting? What's the issue? My guess is looks. My answer is I don't care. I don't care what the issue is. Here's the thing. If she wants to see me and she says it's just as friends, fine. Because when I see her, I'm going to be a high value guy and I'm going to tease her and I'm going to lightly flirt with her and I'm going to give her every reason to see me in a different light. If I want to change her perception of me from friends to something else, it's much better done in person than through any other medium. So yes, it is unfortunate that she's made a logical distinction and put me in a category of friends, but you can get out of the friend zone. We just talked this entire call about how to get out of the friend zone. And in this case, you're in a short friend zone version, right? You're in the, not the 6-month friend zone. You're in the, I met you on a cold approach and she said, I'll see you as a friend. Fine. She has a tiny sample of your personality from which she said, I like you enough to consider you as a friend. Okay. And she's willing to spend time with you. She's willing to invest with you. There's already value there. All you have to do is change the frame subtly, gradually to man to woman. And the other answer that I would give you here is, what's the alternative? If you don't take that date, do you see this ever happening? Through what means are you in text from far away going to change her perception of you to anything other than friend? You're not. It's only going to happen in person. So your chances, if you don't go on the date and try and make something happen, are basically zero. Your chances, if you do go on the date, are actually, if you have good game, surprisingly good. And so I don't care what the issue is. I don't care if the issue is your looks, or if the issue is that you were too meek or didn't stand up for yourself or didn't flirt the first time or something like that. Or if you were too forward and she said no to you before she saw your full personality. I don't care why. I just think, what is the best move from here? That's my entire thought process in game, is what is the right thing to do now, and do it. And the answer here, I don't care why she got this. It doesn't matter. Obviously, do the best you can. If you think it's your looks, dress well, right? And do your hair. But just go be your best self. Don't worry about shit you can't control. Just go do the next right thing. So I don't care why she's saying she sees you as just a friend. I'm seeing it as an opportunity. I have a half-hour to 2-hour window of her time in which to show her how fucking amazing I am, and to challenge her and tease her and give her a hard time and, do all the things that are gonna attract her to me. Because attraction is not a choice, right? If you're being attractive, she will get attracted. She may not act on it, but she will become attractive if you're being attractive. So go there, be attractive, and let the chips fall where they may. But don't worry about the what if, don't worry about the whys of these kind of things. Just do the next right thing. That's advice for the game, that's advice for life. Hey guys, if you want to catch more of these lives and make sure you're getting all the notifications, make sure you hit subscribed and then hit all.